Okay, so you're considering private school. I remember when we were tossing that around in my own family, and I just had so many questions. I didn't know what to expect. Um, I had tossed it back and forth, heard people who went to private school. I went to private college for some time. I did not go to private school myself growing up, but there was a lot of questions. So that's the purpose of this video. It's just to kind of tell you my perspective, our experience in a private school in our local area. And of course, it varies very much so by where you live. I am here in the United States, and hello to those of you in Europe and Canada. I've had different people watching. So hello, those of you abroad. But yeah, and I'm up here in the Northwest. So it's a lot different. I've lived in Florida, and there are private schools, but a lot of charter schools. So I'll touch on that too a little bit because I have some experience with that. And I would say more or less, we just didn't know what to expect. We didn't really know anyone. Actually, we didn't. But we chose, okay, so when you choose a private school, it can just be private or it could be like a religious based private school. So that's two differences right there. Maybe you already knew that. But sometimes you have to dig a little bit, do a little bit of research to find out if this is a religious-based private school. And because it's religious-based, from experience, it doesn't mean it's like super religious. If anything, you might want to send your children there because you think it is a religious, like foundation, whatever. And some colleges, schools, junior highs, whatever, some private schools are straightforward with that. And some, unless if you read it on their website or go to an orientation or research the history of the school, you really would not know. You would think it's just like any other secular or public school. So that's one thing. So you have to think about, what do you want? Do you want something that's faith-based, or do you just want private and I'm going to say exclusive, but I don't know what else to really say to call it. I can't think of another word, but exclusive, I guess, because it is a certain population. Some are private, and it could be for different reasons. It could be for academics. It could be for sports. It could be for, just kind of the social circle. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why people send their children or they go to a private school. So one of the biggest things I noticed, and we noticed as a family, is that the culture is a bit different. Right off the bat, at least here in the United States, private schools do not get state or federal funds. So you have, the donors, alumni, people who went there, whoever is sponsoring that private school or charter school is backing that, usually with the money, okay? Even if it's the families. There's usually, for example, if it's a faith-based private school, a lot of times the kids come from different churches or maybe one particular church. If it's just private, then maybe it was established by some organization or something. And like I said, a lot of times you have to dig. But some of the reasons why people like to choose it is because more of the selective. Ideally, you would think that private schools can turn kids away. I found out that's not always true. Sometimes public school kids get kicked out, expelled from so many public schools in that area that they have to go to the private school, okay? So just because it's private doesn't mean, you have the best behaved this or that or most, affluent or high social economic. Sometimes they got kicked out of their public school and they're that kind of kid. And the only place that's left that can take them is a private school. So keep that in mind too. Maybe ask about that. What are, some of the behavior stats of that school? Some of the schools, really pride themselves on academics, some community work. Sometimes private schools will say, here your child will be academically 2 years ahead compared to public school. That might be the case with some schools, but the ones I researched and have found in my area, they said that, but when I looked at the curriculum as a teacher, it was the same stuff we did in public school. It was the same. Class sizes were a little bit smaller, depending on the grade. But like the teacher education wasn't necessarily much better. Sometimes it's less because private schools, they don't always require the same certifications or endorsements that public schools do. So if that's really important to you and you are sending your child to a private school for the academics, check and see what are the requirements for teachers to teach there. Some don't even have to have a state certification to teach. Some do, but some, as long as they have one, they can teach anything, even if they don't know that area of study. So just because they say that, and there's a whole range even within private schools. I mean, you have your average to really, really high and very, prestigious, and you go there and you are 95% guaranteed to go to a very good college and get a really good job. I mean, you are set like for life. And some private schools are like that, starting in elementary. So you just really have to do your research on that a little bit more. The culture of what I've learned, like in a private school, my experience was because private schools, charter schools, like in Florida where I taught, they did get some state funds to charter schools. Their teachers were going to the same trainings that those of us who didn't work at charter schools went to. It was more of some of the charter schools. The teachers were accountable to that local school district. And I was in the 8th largest school district at that time. It was the 8th largest in the country, in the United States. So very, very large. The elementary had 1,000 kids, over 1,000 kids. And that was just kind of average. So with that, the charter schools, that was a little bit different. But just check for the certifications, the curriculum. Like I said, that might not be really all what it's cracked up to be, Let's see here. What else? I wanted to talk about, the culture. So once you decide, okay, we're going to go with the private school, and if you're totally nervous, don't know what to, just kind of watch, observe. You're like the new kid on the block, right? Especially if you're new to this whole private school thing. You need to just listen. Don't overshare a lot. Don't make buddies, friends. Just really, and even tell your kids, say, you know what, we really need to get to know. Oh, you met a friend? Okay, great. I just need to get to know their families. Things you should do anyway, right? But you kind of got to get the feel. And you got to get the feel of what are they really big on. I mean, is it, donating? Because that's what I was saying. Because private schools do not get the state and federal funding, a lot of the parents are donating. And that's where it can be very interesting, because you have certain people in that area, like your local, maybe people who own franchises or whatever, and they are donating. I mean, it helps. It's needed, because you don't have the thousands, millions of dollars coming from the state or the federal government. So you'll have people who, have different businesses, franchises, whatever, and they're donating. So that's one thing to expect too. So donating, kind of giving. If you are one that's, I don't have that kind of budget, when there are events, volunteer to go on the field trip, volunteer to bring something, if you don't have to donate. If you do, please help, because, those kind of, the schools need that. That brings me to, of course we know, because it's private, you have to pay out of pocket, right? And if there are field trips, in the case when my child was in private school, you're paying your monthly or yearly tuition, however you have it set up, and every school is a little bit different. You're paying that, and then like if there's a field trip, like one of her field trips was to go to Washington, D.C. So you're paying tuition on top of all the cost, and they have it on a plan, a kid-friendly like field trip. But still, you're paying for that. And if there's another trip, or there's, a music program, because my daughter's in music, so music program. So just consider all those things when you are selecting a private school, and look into kind of how much because everything costs, like to participate, our experience, or we participate, everything costs, like almost everything. But some things were really nice. And it was, I won't say it was a horrible experience or anything. It was a good experience for that time. And you kind of have to know your kid, and kind of gauge, not judge, but gauge, kind of, okay, how is my kid? How do they interact? And for that particular time for our family, that was a good choice to do private school. And we've toggled back and forth. And like I said, I teach public. I've never taught private. I've heard of teachers who've taught. I've known teachers. I've had friends, so on and so forth. But I have not. But at that time, that was a good choice for us. So, also with private schools, usually depending, now charter, I'm not quite sure, I don't remember, but there's no state testing. They usually do like SAT test at your junior high, high school level SATs, and they'll do like the STAR reading test, if you're familiar with that. So, or the MAPS, well, where we were at, they did the MAPS test. So they'll do kind of general tests, SAT, ACT, I believe, but they don't do the state testing. So that's something to consider too if you're moving. It was never a problem. We would, we lived out of state, came back, all that kind of stuff. It was never a problem for us, but that's something else to maybe ask about. What type of testing does the private school do? And I already said look into the academics. Like, try to compare, if you can, your home district where you live, their reading and their math, those two, reading, math, and like science. Try to compare the companies, or what kind. You can even just call. Hey, what's the reading program? We just moved in the area. What's our reading program, in the district? And someone knowledgeable should be able to answer that at your local school district. Then you can compare that to what's at the private school. And, see, and if you don't know anything now, you can Google Chat, GPT, or whatever. Let's see here. But you have to think of what you're trying to get out of the private school. Is it for your child to make connections with kids in that environment? There are still all kind of behaviors. And if you've seen my other videos, I've taught at the really high socioeconomic and the low and everything in between. And if you think, oh, well, the kids will be, better behaved, or this will be better, not really. They have more access to things. That's what I found as a parent. So it's not so much behavior, it's still how you're raising your kid, and what kind of values, what are the values in your family that you're instilling in your child. At the end of the day, they're going to make choices. They have to grow and learn from their own choices, right? So don't just think that all the children, teenagers, high school, they do no wrong. That's just not reality, as we know. And I'm honestly really neutral. I think there are fabulous, wonderful teachers, students, everything in public and private. Both. I've met phenomenal people. I have friends on both public and private. So it's just what fits for your family. I hope that helps. All right.